No. Seriously, what exactly do you bring to the table? That was the question Penelope asked me, loudly, in front of 24 people, right as they brought out the birthday cheesecake I had bought for myself. She was standing behind me with a glass of Prosecco, balancing her fake laughter between her sister and some new guy from her yoga circle, the one with the man bun who wore a scarf indoors. The whole table went quiet. Forks hovered midair. Someone whispered, "Oof." It was my birthday. I turned to look at her, and she smirked like she'd just won something. The room didn't know what to do, but she loved that kind of control, that twisted high of saying the most humiliating thing at the perfect volume. And she picked that moment like a sniper picks a heartbeat between breaths. I didn't respond. I just placed the little red envelope on the table. It was her credit card bill, the one she forgot I still had access to. She didn't see it right away. Nobody did. I stood up, tucked my chair in quietly, and walked out without a word. She didn't follow. But when she opened that envelope later that night, she'd find more than just a balance. She'd find a polite note from me, and one sentence at the bottom. "The table you mocked me at? I just sold it. Good luck standing on your own." She doesn't know it yet, but her lease ends in 11 days. The utilities are already in my name again. The shared accounts? Closed. The emergency fund? Transferred. The Audi she drives? Not hers. The humiliation she gifted me? Paid in full. When I stepped out into the night air, I didn't feel anger. Not even hurt. It was something cleaner. Colder. Like the air after snowfall. Still, detached, untouched by emotion. I stood on the curb while the party I had paid for continued behind me, and I realized no one was going to come after me. Not Penelope. Not her sister. Not any of the people I once considered friends. And that silence? That was my answer. I walked to my car slowly, not out of sadness, but out of calculation. My hands weren't shaking. My breath was steady. I unlocked the door, sat in the driver's seat, and just stared at the steering wheel. Then I pulled out my phone and opened the folder I had created 2 months ago, labeled, "If She Ever Goes Too Far." At the time, I made it half as a joke, half as therapy. But tonight, it became my blueprint. The first thing I did was open our joint bank app. I had left just enough funds in there for optics, grocery runs, monthly subscriptions, and a gas bill she never remembered to pay. I routed the rest into my personal savings account, one she didn't know existed. It wasn't vindictive, it was strategic. She had mocked the hand that fed her in front of 24 people, and now that hand was withdrawing. Second, I logged into the cloud account where she stored her business content. I had set it up under my name when she launched her online store, motivational wall prints and scented candles with vague spiritual slogans. Her whole brand was powered by the structure I built. She never learned to manage the back end. Never cared to. Why would she? I was always there to fix things while she ran off to sound baths and self-love seminars. With one click, I scheduled the entire storefront for shutdown in 7 days. Graceful exit. Enough time for her to notice. Not enough time for her to stop it. I sat in the car for an hour. Didn't cry. Didn't scream. Just thought. Thought about the years I spent making her life easier while she turned me into a background character. I wasn't dramatic. I didn't want revenge. I wanted distance. And to never again be someone's safety net while they laughed at the holes in mine. When I finally went home, she still wasn't there. And that was the last night I ever unlocked that door as her husband. When Penelope finally walked through the door, it was just after 1 a.m. She was barefoot, holding her heels in one hand and her phone in the other, still giggling from something or someone who wasn't me. I was sitting at the kitchen counter, not saying a word, just sipping the black coffee I'd made an hour earlier when the adrenaline of execution had worn off. She didn't notice the silence. Not at first. She was too busy scrolling through photos from the party, my party, and critiquing the lighting. She glanced at me like I was a misplaced chair. "Oh, you're still up?" she said, with that distant tone people use when they want you to pretend nothing happened. I nodded once. No expression. No smile. No reaction. That alone made her pause. Then she saw the stack of paper on the table, something alien to her in a world where everything was wireless, paperless, effortless. It was a printed ledger. A full breakdown of our finances, color-coded and brutal. She squinted at the top sheet and tilted her head like she couldn't quite read English. "What's this?" she asked, lifting the first page. "That," I said quietly, "is the first time you've ever seen what it actually costs to live the life you mock." She gave me a look, part confusion, part irritation, but she didn't say anything. Not when she saw the red highlights showing the subscriptions in her name, but paid from my account. Not when she saw the travel expenses filed under business development that were actually spa trips with her sister. Not even when she saw the note at the bottom. As of tonight, all non-essential accounts are closed. Effective immediately. Still, she didn't ask the real question. She didn't ask why. She asked, "Are you seriously doing this right now?" And that was when I stood up, walked past her, and placed a second envelope in her open purse. I didn't look at her. I just said, "You'll want to check your studio lease. Landlord sent a renewal notice 2 weeks ago. I declined on your behalf." I walked to the bedroom, closed the door behind me, locked it, and slept. Not peacefully, not triumphantly, just separately, like someone who had finally admitted the plane was crashing and reached for the oxygen mask instead of trying to save the whole cabin. The next morning, she was gone. So was the stack of paper. She hadn't taken the coffee mug I left for her, or the charger she always borrowed from my nightstand. Just the documents. But the funniest thing? She didn't leave a note. She didn't send a text. She didn't call. That silence. It wasn't victory. It was the sound of a woman realizing the floor beneath her wasn't solid anymore. Penelope didn't come home that night, or the night after, but I didn't ask where she was. I didn't check her location, or message her, or call her friends to ask if she was safe. That part of me, the fixer, the comforter, the predictable anchor, was gone. I didn't need to slam any doors to get closure. I had already begun turning the locks from the inside out. Instead, I woke up early and started my Saturday with quiet precision. I canceled the credit card she used for business purchases, which included everything from scented oils to her $11 smoothies. I made sure to leave the groceries and utilities untouched. I'm not cruel. I'm just done being a blind investor in her lifestyle. She'd already received the email by the time I brewed my coffee. I imagined her looking at her phone, seeing the notification, and refreshing the screen in disbelief. Again and again, but nothing would change. Not this time. Around noon, I got my first text from her. "Why is my business card declined? Trying to check out at the market." I stared at it for a moment. No, hi. No, are you okay? No, let's talk. Just panic wrapped in entitlement. I didn't respond. 30 minutes later, another message came in. "Curtis? What the hell is going on? I'm locked out of the dashboard too. I have clients waiting." Clients. She never called them that before. She always said collaborators or soul partners. Now that the money faucet had turned off, they were suddenly clients. I smiled, but it wasn't a vengeful grin. It was the kind of smile you get when a puzzle finally clicks into place. I didn't reply. An hour later, I heard a car pull into the driveway. It wasn't hers. She'd taken the Audi that morning. It was her sister's. I watched from the window as they both got out, storming up the front steps like they owned the place. I opened the door before they knocked, calm as ever, mug in hand. "Curtis, what the hell is going on?" Penelope snapped. "Are you seriously freezing me out of my own business?" I didn't answer right away. I just sipped the coffee, then said, "No, I'm just letting you run it without my help. That's what you wanted, isn't it?" Her sister chimed in with that familiar tone, righteous, sharp, performative. "You can't just sabotage her like this. She built that brand from the ground up." I laughed. I actually laughed. Not to mock them, but because it was so absurd I couldn't help it. Really? Then she'll be fine. But she might want to start by learning how to log into her own website. Penelope's face changed. That confidence she always wore like perfume. It cracked. She realized I wasn't bluffing. I wasn't being emotional. I was simply done being her foundation. She tried to speak, but I stepped aside and held the door open. "You can come in and get your things, but only the ones you paid for. I've itemized everything else." Her sister scoffed. "You're being spiteful." I shook my head. "No, I'm being accurate." And as they walked past me, I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel cruel. I just felt free. The weight I'd been carrying all these years wasn't love. It was obligation disguised as devotion. And now, for the first time in over a decade, I could finally feel my spine straightening. They stayed for less than 20 minutes. No yelling, no tears, just the sound of drawers opening and closing, zippers moving, shoes being shuffled into bags. She didn't take much. But when she walked back out that door, she knew something that neither of them could say out loud. She didn't live here anymore. By Monday, the narrative had already begun to crumble. and she didn't even realize it yet. Penelope always believed perception was protection, that if people thought you were thriving, then you were. Her world lived through a curated feed, polished selfies, fake quotes attributed to philosophers she'd never read, iced matcha by a window, captioned, "Building my empire," with a sparkle emoji. She believed deeply in the illusion of success. But illusions require maintenance, and silence, on the wrong day, can be louder than scandal. I didn't post anything, didn't make announcements, didn't change my relationship status or block her. I just let the gaps grow. She had always relied on me to manage the back end of her brand, payments, tech support, client invoices, even the newsletter she claimed to write every Thursday. It was all scheduled. And now? It was all paused. Her website displayed an error screen that said, "Site unavailable." The auto emails that used to ping every day with affirmations and sale codes were no longer firing. Her clients, those influencers she'd begged to collaborate with, started messaging her publicly, asking if her brand had closed permanently or if they'd been ghosted. By Wednesday morning, one of her loyal followers commented under her last post, "This feels scammy. Is anyone getting responses?" I watched the dominoes fall from a distance. Not with joy, with an almost clinical detachment. I had nothing to prove. I just knew how much she relied on the image of competence, and how little of it existed beneath the surface. Later that day, she called me. No text, no anger, just one quiet, shaky voicemail. "I need help. I know you're angry, but please. I didn't think you'd actually leave me like this. You said you'd never humiliate me." Humiliate her? I hadn't said a word to anyone. I hadn't posted a thing. I hadn't even replied to messages from mutual friends who had clearly started to notice something was off. The only thing I did was stop shielding her from the weight of her own decisions. That's when I realized something important. Her life wasn't built on love or loyalty. It was built on insulation. She needed me, not for who I was, but for what I deflected. The bills, the clients, the crises, the consequences. I wasn't her partner. I was her shock absorber. And now that I had stepped aside, she was feeling every bump in the road, raw and real, for the first time in years. By Friday, I got a message from a woman I didn't recognize. A copy editor who had apparently worked with Penelope on a spiritual journal she planned to launch this fall. Her message was polite, but sharp. "Hi, Curtis. Sorry to bother you directly. Penelope stopped paying for our last 3 sessions and hasn't responded to my emails. I was under the impression the project was still moving forward. Can you confirm if she's okay?" I didn't reply. I just read it once and forwarded it to Penelope. No message attached, just the forward. And later that night, while I sat alone on my porch with the string lights glowing around me, the same ones she once made fun of for being too plain, I saw her name pop up on my phone again. But I didn't answer. Let the silence speak louder than I ever did. By the time the second week rolled around, the storm she had always kept at bay was now overhead, thunder cracking with every unread message, every unpaid invoice, every follower who stopped liking her posts. Penelope had built a brand on serenity, on balance, on the illusion of clarity, and now she was unraveling in real time, just quietly enough that only she could hear it echo. She showed up at my new place. I'd moved into a furnished apartment 2 towns over, nothing extravagant, just something I could pay for without sharing keys, passwords, or obligations. She didn't knock at first. She just stood outside the door like she expected it to open automatically. I saw her through the peephole. No makeup, hair tied up in a rush. Not the version of her the world was used to seeing. When I finally opened the door, she didn't speak right away. Her mouth opened slightly like she'd rehearsed a line, but forgot it halfway through. Then she pulled out her phone and started scrolling, her fingers trembling slightly, before holding it up. "Why did you delete this?" she asked, showing me her Instagram bio. I didn't look at the screen. I just stared at her, confused. "Delete what?" "The website link. It's gone. And the Shopify page. You took them down. I can't even log in to fix it now. I have a launch next week, Curtis." There it was. Not "I miss you." Not "Can we talk?" Not even "I'm sorry." It was about the launch. The next wave of self-validation. The next product. The next chance to be adored by strangers online while the person in her real life slowly dissolved into a paycheck with feet. I told her the truth. "I didn't delete your brand. I just stopped holding it up." She stared at me like I was speaking another language. "You're punishing me." "No. I said calmly. I'm reminding you that I was never required to fund the lie. Her jaw clenched. I could tell she wanted to flip it back on me, to turn this into another debate she could win with sharp words and selective memory. But something stopped her. Maybe it was the silence in the room. Maybe it was the fact that I wasn't raising my voice. Or maybe it was because, for the first time, she realized she no longer had the leverage to twist the truth. She sat down on the edge of the couch, her voice quieter now. I just thought, you'd always be there. You always were. I nodded. That was the problem. She blinked. Once. Twice. So what now? You just walk away? Let everything I built fall apart? I didn't let it fall, I said. I just stopped catching it every time you dropped it. Then I stood up and handed her a folder. Inside were the remaining account credentials she needed. I didn't revoke them out of spite, just paused everything long enough for her to feel what life without me looked like. She took the folder like it was radioactive, like holding it meant admitting she didn't know how to use the tools she'd once claimed she mastered. As she got up to leave, she paused by the door and looked back. I wasn't trying to humiliate you that night. It was just a joke. Then I guess this is my punchline, I replied. She walked out without saying another word. I didn't feel powerful. I felt finished. And that, in its own way, was more satisfying than revenge. By the third week, the people she used to call her circle had started shrinking. Not because I said anything, I never needed to, but because when you stop funding the performance, the crowd starts realizing the stage was just painted cardboard all along. I watched from a distance as the collapse took on a new shape, not through drama, but through the slow, public erosion of her credibility. It started subtly, a collaborator pulling out of a podcast episode she'd been promoting for weeks. No explanation, just a quiet cancellation and a polite, "We'll reschedule." That never happened. Then came the brand partnership she bragged about landing with a wellness tea company. She posted a teaser on a Monday, and by Friday, the brand had removed all traces of the collaboration from their feed. No drama, just silence, the kind that screams when it echoes in a vacuum. Penelope began reaching out to old friends, even people she hadn't spoken to in years. At first, it was under the pretense of reconnecting, but the subtext was clear: she needed allies. She needed someone to say she was still the protagonist, that she hadn't become the thing she used to mock, someone struggling. But the thing about curated friendships is, once the curation slips, people start seeing you without the filters, and they don't always like what's underneath. I got a call from her mother. We hadn't spoken in over a year. She was always cold to me, always made subtle comments about how Penelope could have married someone with more vision. But this time, her tone was different. "Curtis," she said, "I don't want to meddle, but she's not doing well. She won't say it, but I can tell." I said nothing, just listened. She's always been headstrong, but lately she's lost. She won't admit anything's wrong, but her father and I were worried. "I think she thought you'd come back by now. I think she believed you'd fold." That word, fold, sat with me, because for 12 years, I had, again and again, folded my needs, my boundaries, my exhaustion, my self-respect. I had folded so small, I forgot what it felt like to stretch out fully and breathe. And now that I had, the people around her were realizing something she never wanted to admit. I wasn't a side character. I was the foundation. Later that day, Penelope tried calling again. No voicemail this time, just a missed call. Then another. Then a text. "I just want to talk. No fighting. I swear. Just come over for 10 minutes. I didn't respond. I didn't even open it until the next morning. But I did something I hadn't done in weeks. I clicked on her Instagram. The latest photo she posted was 2 days old. A picture of an empty cup of coffee with a long caption about starting over, about shedding old energy, about reclaiming solitude. And not a single comment under it mentioned me. But more than that, none of them sounded convinced. There were no fire emojis. No, "You got this, queen." Just a handful of lukewarm hearts and one comment that said, "What happened to the launch?" That one stuck with me, because she didn't reply. And when a woman like Penelope doesn't answer publicly, it means the silence finally got louder than the story she was trying to tell. It had been over a month since the birthday party. A month since the wine glass toast that broke more than just the moment. Since the jokes that felt more like jabs. Since I stopped being her shadow and started becoming my own person again. Penelope didn't try to contact me after that last unanswered message. Maybe she realized there was nothing left to salvage. Maybe pride got in the way. Or maybe, finally, she understood the damage wasn't done with one cruel comment, but by 1,000 quiet choices that came before it. I wasn't angry anymore. I had passed through that, burned through it like fuel. What remained was clarity, and something that felt dangerously close to peace. I had started running again. Not metaphorically, real running. 6 a.m., just before the city woke up. No earbuds. Just me, the cold air, and a body that no longer felt like it existed just to hold tension. I started cooking too. Nothing fancy. Just things I actually liked. Not the macrobiotic nonsense I used to eat with her, because gluten is low vibration. Now it was butter, spice, and full-fat everything. I had no one to impress. That was the best part. Then one day, out of nowhere, I ran into her. Grocery store. Sunday. I had a basket full of real food. She had one with sparkling water and kale chips. She looked thinner, tired, but not in a tragic way. Just quieter. We almost passed each other. Almost. But she turned. Curtis? I nodded. Hey, Pen. For a second, we both stood there. Not awkward, not dramatic. Just two people who used to share a life and now only shared a moment. You look good, she said. You too, I lied gently. There was a pause. She looked down at her basket, then back at me. I'm sorry, she said. About the party. About all of it. I don't think I ever said that in a way that mattered. I nodded slowly. I know. That was it. No long speech. No begging. No blaming. Just an apology that didn't try to come with conditions. She smiled faintly. You were right, by the way. About the brand. I didn't build it. You did. I just stood on it. I wanted you to succeed, I said. I still do. Another pause. Then she asked, Are you happy? I thought about that. Really thought. About the silence in my apartment that didn't ache anymore. About the meals I made with my hands. The morning runs. The new job I had just started, a small logistics firm with a better culture, less stress. About the fact that no one was mocking me at dinner anymore. Because I no longer shared the table with anyone who thought that was love. I smiled, this time with no weight behind it. Yeah, I am. She nodded again. Good. And just like that, she turned and walked away. No tears. No scene. Just closure. I watched her go. The woman who once made me feel like I needed to shrink to fit into her world. And I didn't feel bitter. I didn't feel regret. I felt something rare. Done. And on the way out of the store, with sunlight warming my face and real food in my bag, I realized something I never thought I'd say. Her humiliation set me free. And I'm grateful.